This is an open letter to Bill Maher and a few of my friends who are puzzled about the question of hijab. The Muslim covering, Muslims wanting to cover their females, or in general, Middle Easterners wanting to cover their females up with clothing, which is not exactly a Muslim thing. This is a traditional thing. Christians used to do it up to 100 years ago. In fact, there are still pictures of Christian West in Europe, in France, UK, and Germany, and United States. There are still pictures of police trying to somehow enforce some kind of moral code with regards to women, not being in bathing suits and skirts not being shorter than a certain length. So it's basically a worldwide traditional thing, except maybe the very warm climates, very warm and humid climates that would it would be prohibitive to cover anybody up with any kind of clothing, because life becomes very difficult. So the point is this: with regards to, I'm not defending hijab or women covering up. I think it should be optional. I'm not by no way defending the matter. I just want to explain it why they have traditionally, most cultures of uh, Middle East and Europe and North Africa have been in favor of covering up the women. They're women. Here's the thing. Let's start the matter up with the matter of guns in the United States, because they're very relevant. Guns in the United States, there are many guns sold and bought and sold in the United States, and uh, the the percentage of ownership is relatively high relative to countries that have banned guns. And you see that, and there's a lot of homicides taking place in the United States, and a lot of gun violence, because of one of the reasons is the availability of guns, easy availability of guns. A lot of people point to the fact that there are a few countries in the world where percentage of gun ownership is even higher than the United States, and but what they can't figure out is, why is the homicide rate in those countries not as high as the United States? Why is gun violence is not as high as the United States, although the gun ownership is higher than the United States? Those countries include countries such as Sweden, such as Finland. I believe Switzerland is part of that group. And they wonder the question: how come there is there is not enough gun violence in these countries, although the rate of gun ownership is higher than the United States? What I believe it comes down to is that in those countries, because of good environment that they have created to raise their children, um, set of principles is carved into children's brains. Children are grown up with principles, with integrity and self-respect. So if you combine, raising children with principles, with some kind of integrity and self-respect, they will, even though guns would may be available to them, they will they will not be tempted to uh, to force their will upon others with something like a gun, because they have self-respect, they have integrity, and they have a set of principles that they have been raised with. So they would not be tempted to force their will upon others by violence, with the help of a gun, or by violence. The homicide rate goes up, the gun violence rate goes up if you raise children without principles, with little integrity and no self-respect, and then you allow them free access to guns. So basically, that's how the homicide rate is so high in the United States, and why it's so low in these countries that have even higher percentage of ownership of guns. The difference is just the raising of the kid parts, the raising of the next generation part, that is, they do it correctly, one can say. Integrity, self-respect, and a set of principle is how they raise their kids. And unfortunately, and one of the reasons is they got small population, they can control it, they can, give their best to it. But in the United States, with, the educational system, as we know, is, all ripped apart. There's much more investment in war and militarism than there is in education. Well, there is as far as the government is concerned, there is a good and bad in it as well. Because if you have noticed, countries like Switzerland, Sweden, and Finland, because their citizens have been raised with a set of principles and self-respect and some kind of integrity, you don't see them involved in any aggressive wars of aggression, such as in Afghanistan and Iraq. It's a double-edged sword. If you raise your population with integrity and self-respect and based on a set of principles, yes, you will get less gun violence at home, but then these citizens will also refrain from, going to other people's countries and invading them based on any, set of flimsy evidence. It goes both ways. It works home and away. If you raise people right, they will also not be aggressors. And that's, I guess, the military-industrial complex in the United States is not in favor of that. They don't want to raise, they don't want to have, what they call it, the conscientious objectors to war. They don't want people sitting out wars that they profit from. They want to undertake to expand the empire and expand their influence. So it's sort of like, they don't want people with principle, because then they can't have the wars that they want. They will not have any participants in the wars that they want. I'm getting off topic. The point is this: guns are available in both kind of societies, but there is less gun violence in one society, one set of societies, because people grow up with a set of principles, with integrity and self-respect. So there is, although guns are freely available, but you don't see much gun crimes. But then, in a society where guns are freely available and the next generations are not grown up, have not grown up with on a set of principles with integrity and self-respect, you see a lot of gun violence. Now, how is this connected to the matter of hijab? How is this matter connected to the matter of Muslim women covering up? Well, it's connected because in a way that the same way you can hold a gun to somebody's head and force them, manipulate them to do your bidding, to do a favor to you, to hand over their money, the same way you can put a gun to somebody's head and hold them hostage against their will, to manipulate them, to enforce your will upon them. More or less the same effect. Pussy can have more or less the same effect on men. It's you can consider a pussy as similar to a gun, a tool of enforcement, a tool of manipulation, a tool that all women have. It's sort of like saying that this is a tool that all women have. Like, like a gun, you can say, the rate of gun ownership is high. Well, you have this enforcement tool, this manipulative tool, this very extremely potent tool that all women have, and that is the pussy. Now, if you look at it that way, if you look at pussy as an enforcement tool, then you come to the conclusion that as a very potent enforcement tool, manipulative tool, sexuality of women as a very manipulative tool, very potent enforcement tool. If you look at it that way, then you come to the conclusion that, okay, since all women are armed with this dangerous tool, then all it comes down to, just like the gun ownership matter, all it comes down to is whether women have the principle, self-respect and integrity not to use this tool, manipulative tools, enforcement tool, in order to get ahead in life, in order to get what they want. You see, all it comes down to, we know that all women have the pussy, so all it comes down to, this weapon, they all have carried this weapon with themselves at all times, at all places. What it comes down to is the woman's principles, integrity and self-respect, not to use this tool every time she wants to get her way. And again, Mr. Bill Maher, this is connected also to the matter that you were recently discussing with regards to relationship in workplaces in the corporations, U.S. corporations, and you were for relationship in workplaces, and you were like, why are we preventing adult human beings from forming relationships in their workplaces when we know that workplace is one of the few places that Americans interact with each other, and we shouldn't be so uptight about allowing adults to have relationship in their workplace. Well, that's the thing. These are all connected. The connection is the woman, and the connection is enforcement tool. Corporations, are very efficient in the United States. Are much more efficient. As we know, corporations in the United States are much more efficient than the government. So they're thinking ahead. They know that sexuality for women is a very potent tool. It's an arms. It's like a gun. It's a weapon that they have. And if they allow women to use that weapon, their sexuality, their pussy, in the workplace. They allow relationships to happen. They know that women some, not all women, not all women, some may use, some without principles, self-respect and integrity will use that pussy to get ahead, promotion wise, bonus wise, income wise, favor wise, in any way they can. Those few, let's say a few, who don't have principles, integrity and self-respect will use their pussy in forming relationship with men who are in superior positions than them, will use their pussy to get ahead in any aspect that you can think of. The result is that other women, we know that women are like to follow. Women are, fashion is mostly directed at women because women are followers. They want to, follow the crowd. Women are much better at following the crowd than men are. So what happens is that when a few women see that one of them is getting ahead by, using her sexuality, using her weapon, using her pussy to get ahead, they want to compete. They want to follow. They're good followers. Women are good followers. So all you have to have is one woman without principle, integrity, and self-respect in a corporation. One, and before long, you will have a pussy. You will have a pussy race. You will have all these women trying to outcompete each other at blowing the boss. All these women will try to outcompete each other at blowing the boss. As the result, you will have a clusterfuck of all these women trying to outcompete each other, blowing the boss. And this is what the corporations don't want. And this is exactly what these Middle Eastern companies trying to prevent, because they see it at the society-wide. It's just not a matter of corporation. They see it society-wide, that if they allow women to compete with each other sexually in the society and use their pussy, their weapon, to get ahead, they will have a clusterfuck. They will have a situation in which women are trying to outcompete with each other, to manipulate men at all times in order to get ahead. And that's something that they're very afraid of. There is a way out of this. There is a way out of this, just like the European countries have done so, is to, raise your women with principles, integrity, and self-respect, so you will not have women, trying to outsell each other, outslut each other with regards to men in positions of power and wealth. But it's very difficult, especially because once one gives up her principles and self-respect and integrity, other women will follow, because women by nature are followers. So you can do, you know, you can, women can all be well behaved until one breaks the rules and use her pussy to get ahead, use her sexuality to get ahead, and suddenly you will have a rush of women who also say, "Hey, I can, you know, forego my principles if it means I get more money, I get ahead, I get the next promotion." So it's easy to blame them why they are persecuting their women, because on the surface it seems they're persecuting their women, these Middle Eastern countries. But the reality is they are afraid of that weapon. The men in in that areas of the world where they still want to cover their women, they're afraid of their women. They're afraid of that weapon that women carry. They don't want to be manipulated with that weapon, that sexuality, that pussy. They don't. They know it's a very potent weapon. They know, and on top of what women can do and will do, you know, few that don't have principles, and the rest who will follow and forego their principles. On top of that, the reason men see themselves as victims and is because men are can say no to pussy. How many men do you know where uh, they have been offered pussy with no consequence, with uh, how how many men do you know who will not who will refuse a pussy that has been offered with no consequence? So sort of like, here's the pussy, and with no strings attached, here is the pussy. How many men do you know who can refuse that? Very few. Very few men will refuse pussy. That's because this is how we men are programmed to chase the pussy. So when you catch the pussy, who the hell would give it up? Or when the pussy just walks right up to you and offers, who the hell would give it up? Would refuse it? Well, I have refused some, not being gay and enjoying pussy, but I have been forced to refuse in some instances, you know, offered pussy, because I don't know that woman who's offering the pussy what she has in mind. It seems that it's pussy without consequences, but I don't know her well enough to know if she has enough principles, enough self-respect, and enough integrity not to try to manipulate me after I sleep with her, not to try to extort me after I sleep with her, not try to, you know, work me after I sleep with her. So because I don't know that woman that well, I don't know if it's a principled person or not, I refuse the pussy. But how many men do you know who will do that? It's sort of like, I don't care if whatever she wants, I will give her. I need the pussy. That's how most men react to when they're offered pussy. The point is this, and that's why we can go into details. That's why so many, you know, during the Cold War, so many agents of Soviet Union were females, and they were sent to the West, and their main job, there's a specific term for them, and their main job was to manipulate men. Why? Why that so many women were used to, you know, as espionage, as, you know, blackmail, espionage, because they know, because it's proven, it's a fact that men cannot refuse pussy, rarely will refuse pussy, and they, after the, after the interaction takes place, after the man sleeps with the woman, then pretty much the woman has the upper hand, and she can manipulate the man into doing anything she wants. Not even forcefully, willingly. Men will do, will bend out of shape for a good pussy. So the point is this, that the relationship, because the relationship is not equal, US corporations as well as Middle Eastern societies have realized that if they give women free range of, being allowed to seduce anybody they want with their sexuality, there's always going to be a few who would not act on principles, who will have low integrity and no self-respect, and they will use that pussy to get what they want. And they know that women being followers, then there is a rush for women trying to outcompete each other to get what they want by just using their sexuality. So you can say hijab in the Middle East a lot like gun control in the West. It's something that they have enacted upon and say, okay, we're gonna cover up this weapon that women have, arms control. We're gonna cover up the woman so she cannot use that extremely potent weapon that she has, her sexuality, because we know men cannot refuse that weapon. Men are easily manipulated with that weapon. As simple as that. Just like in the United States, when they say, or Canada, when they say, okay, gun control. Why? Because we know so many members of our society have grown up without principles, integrity, and self-respect, and they will use these arms, these guns, in order to force their will, manipulate other people into, giving them money and stuff and other things that they want, by using these weapons, enforce their will upon other people, manipulate other people with the use of these weapons, with the use of these guns. So we're gonna control these weapons. We're gonna have arms control. We're going to make gun ownership illegal. Making gun ownership illegal is exactly the same as covering up the woman and trying to cover up the weapon that women hold between their legs. It's more or less the same thing. It's based on the same idea. They both have a different solution, and that is, raise the next generation with principles, integrity, and self-respect, in order for them not to use the gun or the pussy to try to manipulate other people, force other people to get what they want. But that's a long-term plan in which, unfortunately, neither, the Middle Easterns are not exactly planned kind of people. They don't exactly work based on long-term plans. And that's a cultural thing. For example, Iran, being on a crossroad of the world, they've never being on the right at the bottleneck of the Silk Road, never really had could implement very long-term plans. The culture is not very long-term because except in very few exceptions. Unfortunately, the culture has become transitory, more and more transitory, and it's not, they don't see that far down, like, for example, the Japanese do. or the Swedish do, or the Finnish do, or the people of Switzerland. You have to have a very stable society, country, territory, very stable territory for a very long time, and spend a lot of money in raising your next generations, spend a lot of money on your educational system in order to raise generation after generation with principle and self-respect and integrity. And as you can see, even United States, with all the money in the world, still, have failed to raise many generations with strong principles, integrity, and self-respect. They have neglected, especially the minority children, have failed to invest in their education, and have been raising children with raising children with very little principles, very little self-respect and integrity, and you see that so much gun violence taking place. It's just as simple as that. It's not a, either you think about long term and you invest in education and raising of generations after generation with good principles, or you apply gun control, or in case of Middle East, you tell all the women that they have to cover up their weapon and not use their weapon, prohibit them from using their weapon, prohibit them from having contact with the opposite sex, because they fear that they have not first of all, they have not invested in the education of their women, so they feel their women lack principles, self-respect and integrity, and also they know their men also lack self-control, because they also lack principles and self-respect and integrity. So they basically come up with a solution that, okay, let have all the women cover up their weapon, and let men and women sit separately and work separately and not meet each other, in order to keep some kind of functioning society. Yeah,